I haven't seen one of these videos yet for Riftbound, whether you call it the autocomplete or the web's most searched questions. Let's see, what are people Googling about Riftbound? All right, first up, is Riftbound good? I would say so. I mean, obviously I've been doing the broadcasts for Riftbound for the tournaments, for the RQs in Europe. But I think even as just like a League of Legends fan, historically, plus a card games player, I've been playing like card games for the best part of 20 years. I think it's pretty good. I think it's really cool to be in a game right at the beginning as it's starting to grow. There's a lot of variants coming, a lot of fun stuff, powerful stuff, some jank. Not enough jank yet. I want to see more jank, but it is good. If you like League of Legends, it's good. If you like card games, it's good. I would say yes. Riftbound is good. I'm biased though. Is Riftbound popular? Well, yeah, pretty much any trading card game in 2026 seems popular, but Riftbound I think has taken the TCG community by storm in the sense of you go to a local game store, it's hard to find product, it's hard to get tickets to Nexus nights, especially here at my local game store. We sell out every single time, like a month in advance. So yeah, it absolutely is popular. Is Riftbound a good investment of time for happiness? Sure. A way to socially meet people? Sure. Are you going to open a signature card and then potentially look at selling it to somebody for a lot of money? You might, but you probably aren't going to get that, and most people won't, and that is a highly exclusive experience. So it's a good investment of your time and of your money if you're putting together a deck to play against people. That's about as far as I would say it's worth investing. Is Riftbound online? Not yet officially. And I say yet, I don't know anything, but I think people speculate that Riot Games, being an online game company, wouldn't be surprised if they were looking into it. We've had nothing official communication-wise to us about whether Riftbound is going to be online. Is Riftbound doing well? And the one underneath it is Riftbound dying? No, Riftbound is not dying. It's only the third set. Unleashed comes out in a couple days from now. And yes, it is doing well. I think the problem of not having enough product to sell to people is a good sign that the game is doing well. And Riot have put out quite a few interviews and things like that, talking about their ethos for the number of sets coming in the future. So I think it's pretty good. People thought the sky was falling with bans. It's fine. We're all good. The meta is actually really fun and diverse right now. Is Riftbound hard to play? It can be. It's easy to pick up, I would say. Hard to master. There's a lot of interactions that kind of go in one way towards TCGs and then in another way that they interact differently. So it's kind of interesting, kind of different. I would say it's extremely hard to be competitive at, and I think people have started feeling that when you go from your Summoner Skirmish level up to an RQ, you're like, damn, every player in this room is as good as the best people in my store. Okay, let's go on to what question. So what is a sideboard in Riftbound? Sideboard is a set of between 0 and 8 cards that sit outside of your main deck, but within your deck list. So when you're playing competitive games in best of 3, in between games 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, you get to pick which cards to take out of your deck and which cards to move in. A really easy example of this is if you're playing up against Dazzling Aurora, for instance, you probably want to sideboard in cards that deal with gear, like Salvage if you're playing Order. The other thing is if you're playing best of 1s, there's a slightly different format where you get to sideboard some cards in and out, but essentially a sideboard is a set of 8 cards, normally in kind of like 2s, sometimes you get copies of 1 of, that just help you deal with things that you don't necessarily want in the main part of your deck, because you want that consistency in game 1 when you don't know what you're going to go up against. What is a gold gear token? Good question. Those of you that played Spiritforge will have seen cards that say when this enters, play a gold gear. When this does something else, like Conquer, create a gold gear. It's essentially just a token. Let me see if I have one on my desk. Sure, here we go. So this is a gold gear token. You don't have to use the official token, but it is always helpful if you do. Essentially, instead of recycling a rune, you can just exhaust this and then send it to the trash. So tokens don't survive in the trash, but you can just put it to the side. And instead of recycling a rune, that's what you do. That is what a gold token is. Riftbound, what is a miracle deck? Miracle in Riftbound was a deck that came from the card Cold Shot and Stacked Deck. And essentially, you would just see a million cards every turn in your deck and cast a bunch of spells for free, not really pay anything from them. There was a few different cards to the combo as well, but it typically came from Chaos. And the payoff was either playing something like Rasa the Summoner, or the Sunderer, I should say, or Battering Ram for really cheap, playing them very early. And the name Miracle, I believe people take it from Miracle Rogue, which used to be a deck in Hearthstone, which should do a similar thing, you just draw a ton. It's been a very long time since I thought about Hearthstone, so I might be slightly off on that. But that's where the name comes from, and that is the play pattern. Cold Shot's banned, it's out of here, you don't get to play it anymore. We don't really talk about Miracle decks because they don't work as well anymore. What does outnumbered mean? I think this goes to the next part of the next question that I can see, which is what are overnumbered cards? I think this is just a naming thing. Overnumbered cards are essentially just extras, cosmetic extras within the pack, within the set, I should say. So once you go past all of the cards that are normally printed, you'll see in the bottom left of the card, there's actually like a small number here. That is the number of the card in each set. I don't think I have any overnumbers here in front of me, but essentially you'll go up over the number. So for instance, this is 221 for Spirit Forge. Anything over 221 is what we call an overnumbered card. Tends to be cosmetic treatments of cards that were printed either in Spirit Forge or previous set. And they tend to be what collectors like to go for. So different art, Spirit Blossom, that type of thing. That is what an overnumbered card is. Riftbound, what is Shield? Shield is a status that is applied when you're a defender at a battlefield. Essentially, as soon as you become a defender, you get like, I think it's +1 for most instances of Shield. Double check, if you're watching this and new cards have come out, there might be new additions to Shield. But in the base game, Shield, when you're a defender, you get extra might. Only while you're a defender. The moment you're not defending anymore, you don't get that. And you don't get it on attack either. Riftbound, what are signature cards? Signature cards, we talked already a little bit about overnumber cards. Well, signature cards are kind of like the extension of this. Signature cards are signed, I believe, by the artist that actually drew or designed the legend card. Very, very cool. Very hard to find because it's totally random chance, but some people, here's looking at Blevins, seem to have all the luck in the world of pulling that. Yeah, maybe one day, but going back to that investment question, probably not going to pull one, probably never going to see one. It's okay. You might see somebody else have one. It's all good. And what is Banish? Okay, so Banish has terms from other games, but essentially it is a mythical part of the game that does not exist. So Banish is what you need to make some cards work. Just assume they're not in the game anymore. In Magic, we call it exiling. Essentially, they're not in the base, they're not in your hand, they're not in the battlefield, they're not in the trash. They have to exist somewhere outside of all those places in order for things to work, so that you can send them somewhere and bring them back. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but essentially what people will tend to do when something is banished is where you have your deck and your graveyard sat. If you turn it sideways above the graveyard, so put them kind of up and out of the way, that tends to be what people do. Never forget to put your banished cards back in your deck at the end of the game, because they're not actually removed from the game, just for while the game is happening. What happens when a champion dies? Well, they go to the trash, and then at the end of the game, you take them out of the trash and you put them back in your chosen champion zone. Simple, just like with any other unit. Riftbound who assigns damage? Okay, so this is really a multi-layered question, but in combat, you assign damage at the same time, again, barring any new rules, you assign damage at the same time as your opponent, and you pick what dies from your opponents in combat. So if there's not enough damage to kill every single unit, you as the attacker are picking which of the defending units are going to die. Likewise, if you are casting a spell like Falling Star, you're the one picking, okay, I'm going to deal 3 damage to this unit and 3 damage to that unit. Of course, that's a little bit more straightforward. There are, of course, caveats to that. The tank keyword is going to force you to assign damage. It actually reads, I think the exact wording is, this unit must be assigned combat damage first. So you're still assigning combat damage, but you have to assign it to there first. Likewise, backline plus the Caitlyn unit that used to be, whether they'll errata it to say backline or not, I'm not sure, but backline coming in Unleashed, it's that they must be assigned damage last. So you get to assign it, but you have to assign it last. Riftbound Wholesale. That's not really a who question, but wholesale, essentially, for those of you that care, is where your local game store may very well buy their cards from, because they have to buy it from somebody in the UK, typically is the company Asmodee, and a few others that buy from Asmodee. But wholesale is an important part of your local game store, of determining when they get their cards, how they get their cards, who they get them sent by. So more you know. If you're interested, go find out who your local game store get from. Who goes first? Good question. You get to decide it randomly. The rules in the tournament rules say it must be random. You cannot decide via any other method that isn't random. Unless, of course, you're in a seeded tournament, like an RQ, and you're in top 8, in which case the highest seed goes first. Your local game store may very well pick to do seeded top bracket, like top cut. If they do, then it'll be the player that came first or higher out of the Swiss portion. But if you and I are just playing a game, we can roll 2 dice to decide who goes first. A lot of people don't like rolling 2 dice because you frequently will match numbers. Everyone rolls 7 again and again and again. So a lot of people order even. That's also fine. One of my favorites from Magic that people have done, that I'm pretty sure you can do with Riftbound cards, but I haven't seen anyone do it yet, is rock, paper, scissors, where you have 3 cards that represent each thematically, and I pick one, you pick one, and you know, we rock, paper, scissors. I don't know how that would work out in a tournament, but it's always fun when I get to do that. Who has priority in a showdown? And the one before it is, who is the attacker? Okay, well, if you're playing Riftbound, and you decide to move into a battlefield, you are the attacker. Now, that does change sometimes, but typically, if you make a move to a battlefield, you are the attacker. And you have priority in a showdown when you get to the action phases. Now, it tends to be the active player has priority first, and that generally doesn't change too much. Of course, there are niche situations where if I move you into a showdown, that's where it gets a little bit crazy. For instance, the card Charm can do that. If I charm a unit into a battlefield that I am defending at, you are the attacker on my turn, and that's where things can be a little bit different. But typically, when you attack on your turn, you're the attacker, you have priority first, you get to use actions, and you get to do everything first. But of course, then reactions can resolve before actions finalize and resolve. So yeah, priority is one of the hardest things in Riftbound to do. Too many fringe cases to go through everything right now, but generally, if it's your turn, you're moving things in, you're the attacker. Okay, Riftbound, when do units heal? Good question again. So two times minimum. There's an asterisk there. Units heal at the end of every combat showdown and at the end of the turn. So if you have 1 combat showdown in a turn, they'll heal after that and at the end of the turn. If you have multiple combat showdowns, might be 2, could even be 3 if your unit lasts long enough. There's as many heals as there are combat showdowns plus the end of the turn. And that's really important because it means if you use a damage spell before a showdown, but you still don't kill the unit in the showdown, they will heal at the end of that combat, and the damage for the rest of the turn is almost as if it hasn't been done before. A couple of other things to watch out for on that is, as said, if you use stuff before combat, the other option that people tend to have is, going up and above damage. You can then reduce their damage down if you don't have a combat showdown. So say you pump a unit that has damage on it, and then after that they get smoke screened and it takes them down below 0. There's other things that you got to deal with health. But yeah, healing is at the end of a combat showdown, at the end of the turn. When can you play reactions? Really important thing to know. If it is your turn and there is nothing happening, you can play a reaction. But most of the time, reactions tend to be used when something like an effect or an action is on the chain, or another reaction. So that is the most important thing, is they can be used at what we might call as a fast speed. So you've played an action, I want to react to it. You've played a reaction, I want to react to your reaction. That's the distinction between actions and reactions, and that is the important thing with regards to when a reaction can be played. Typically, they're the most flexible of cards. You can play a reaction to a trigger going on the chain. For instance, say someone plays Bryn here, the card that says your opponents may not be able to play any more cards for the rest of the turn. That actually puts a trigger onto the chain. You can react to that trigger before it resolves while you can still play cards. Riftbound, when does a showdown end? Showdown ends when all players have passed priority and said that they wish to do nothing else with an empty chain. So if I have no actions and you have no actions, a showdown will occur, combat will happen, units will be damaged, and generally you'll have a cleanup, and that will be the end of a showdown where you do I conquer, I score a point. The thing that I'm stumbling over that I want to mention though is the difference there is death knell effects, and this is really important for the changes that happened recently. If a death knell effect goes on the stack, now you haven't lost control of the battlefield. If I have a Lonely Porrow and a Lonely Porrow dies, that trigger goes on the chain. I still hold that battlefield because we're still in the middle of that showdown, because the cleanup hasn't fully happened yet. So I'm able to play things to the battlefield, for instance, like a Rengar, trying to think of other things that actually might end up happening in future. But anything that allows you to kind of put a unit onto a battlefield. Same with the Glass Mixologist, similar principle. You still have the battlefield. The showdown hasn't ended yet. That's one to keep an eye out for. When I attack trigger, so those are really important to know. That's after moving. You then go into the beginning of a showdown, and it's when I attack, triggers go on the stack. When I defend, triggers go on the chain, sorry, not the stack. And importantly, Riftbound resolves the chain backwards, so the when I defend trigger happens first, then the when I attack trigger happens after it, but it applies to the chain first. Riftbound, when can I play reactions? Already kind of talked about that, but pretty much anytime. You have to have something to react to though, if it is not your turn. When can you play actions? Now this one's actually more important than when can you play reactions, because you can't play actions all the time in Riftbound. When can you play actions? On your turn, you can play actions anytime there is no active chain happening once you're past kind of like the ABCD phase. So ABCD has happened, you've drawn for turn, you can play an action at any point until the game enters what is called a closed state. So that would mean you're in a showdown and other things are happening. If you've gone to a showdown and you've cast, for instance, Punch First, which is an action, you can't then cast another card that has action before Punch First resolves. You have to know the difference between actions and reactions. I think a lot of people at the beginning of Riftbound were a little bit confused about that. And importantly, if it is your opponent's turn, the only time you can play an action is when the chain is empty during a showdown. You cannot cast an action on your opponent's turn at any other time. When can you play spells? If it doesn't say action on it and it doesn't say reaction on it, you can only play it on your turn. Really important. That's the hard distinction on that, at least as the rules currently state. Some cards, I'm guessing at some point will break timing restrictions, but generally, if a spell doesn't have a timing on it, like action and reaction, it's only on your turn, only when there's nothing on the chain. Riftbound, why? Why is Flash so expensive? Well, Flash is a card that was printed in the Proving Grounds set, which I think nobody really thought was going to be quite as good as it was, but it turns out Proving Grounds was really pretty damn good. Flash is coming down in price very quickly. Game stores seem to have been sent hundreds of copies because it is a promo for doing cool things within the community. So do cool things in your community, get cheap, get free copies of Flash, bring the price down, please. But it was expensive because it was really hard to find and a very impactful spell, especially in Origins with Annie. You'd always be able to have two runes up in order to be able to cast Flash. Already talked about why it's called Miracle. Riftbound, why so expensive? Because there wasn't really a whole lot of printing of Origins. Riot talked about this a lot. The problem's getting better, the prices are coming down. Don't pay above MSRP, and if you're looking for cards for deck by singles, don't pay exorbitant prices. Why is Flash good? I slightly touched on this already. It's really powerful. Like, it essentially allows you to save units from combat incredibly effectively for a very small amount of energy. Annie, for instance, is a champion or legend that lets you untap 2 runes at the end of the turn. It allows you to basically always have Flash up, always be able to save your units. You're allowed to move them into a battlefield on your turn, keep them safe, and at the end of the turn, untap to have flash available. Same with like Targon's Peak was another reason that it is pretty good. Just high mobility, allows you to avoid a lot of cards that are locked down to like when at a battlefield, for instance. Riftbound review, it's great. Quickest review you're ever gonna have. Riftbound Reddit, that's not a why question, that doesn't exist. Reddit's fun as always for Riftbound. It's where you can get a lot of your preview news when the new sets are coming out. Riftbound how to play, that is a bigger question than this is going to ever answer. There's some good resources and lots of interesting content creators to watch that will teach you how to play Riftbound. If you want to play at a good level, I'm sure there are some guides out there. Riftbound, how many cards in a deck? In a competitive / constructed deck, it is 40 cards plus your 12-card rune deck, plus 3 battlefields, plus 0 to 8 sideboard cards. It used to be 0 or 8. You couldn't have anything in between, but now it is 0 to 8. That is how many cards are in the deck. For constructed. For draft, it is less. I think it's 25. I should look at that before my pre-rift this weekend. But yeah, essentially you play with less cards and you get one more domain. So how many cards in a deck depends on the format you're playing. How to build a deck. Well, find 40 cards that you like, put them in a deck, and have one of them be your chosen champion. But in all honesty, a lot of people will look at places like Pillar of Archive or Turn 'em Sideways have a good deck guide for what is going on in the meta right now. We're about to have a giant shakeup of the meta, so keep your eyes on some of your favorite content creators and resources like that to figure out how to build a deck. Essentially, you want a curve. Depending on your strategy, you want to be able to have some early game plays, some mid game plays, and late game plays with a coherent thread all the way through. It's important to understand which cards in your deck are giving you presence and power at which point in the game, but that is a much bigger topic than I can get into in this one video. Riftbound how to win. Get to 8 points. If you're playing on Aspirant's Climb, get to 9 points. If you're playing on double Aspirant's Climb or more, get to that many points, plus the number of Aspirant's Climb. But in all seriousness, how to win a Riftbound, it is about understanding what options you have available, not only just in your hand, but what the next set of options are likely to be from your deck and how they interact with the current board state, as well as what your opponent can have. One of the reasons that decks are quite strong and consistent in Riftbound is you get to see more cards. The more cards of your deck you get to see, the more options you have available. So this kind of goes back to like how to build a deck, how to win. The more you see of your deck, the more you see of your strategy in a coherent way, the more likely you are to win. Some decks will struggle against other archetypes. Right now we're not in a meta that Dazzling Aurora can do very well, so it is going to struggle, but as soon as we get new cards, as soon as we get new things to get us into the late game, we might be able to compete a little bit better. But there are lots of different ways to construct a deck to play in Riftbound, but the only way to win is to get that winning point. How does equipment work? Really quick one is Spiritforge introduced equipment. Equipment, essentially you pay a cost. There's a couple of rules like Weapon Master that will allow you to attach. Equipment, you pay the cost, you attach it to the unit. You should stack them underneath. I actually have some here, so go back to my trusty Stellacorn Herder. So if you want to attach a longsword to a Stellacorn Herder, this is the bit you need visible. Don't do this, not this. Jupiter will scream at you if you do this. You got to do that. See? No screaming. You stacked your equipment right. Riftbound, how to beat Irelia. Don't play Kai'Sa. Essentially, Irelia, very mobile, very good with counter spells, very good with pump spells, hard to beat in combat. The actual way you beat Irelia is you have to have a deck archetype that can attack the Irelia without directly casting spells like damage at her. That's why Kai'Sa struggles. Victor, for instance, has access to spells like Cold Weak. That is really good at getting around Irelia, because once Irelia typically has like a Guardian Angel attached, very difficult to deal with. So if you can play cards or force Irelia into combats that she's not ready for or can't get over the top of, that tends to be how you beat Irelia. But the reason that she has such a high presence at RQs is she is very difficult to beat, and it is difficult to beat a decent Irelia player. You basically have to play out of your mind and get a little bit lucky in certain circumstances, especially matchup dependent. Like the counter spells in Irelia are insane, and Defiant Dance as a spell to give you -2 to one unit, and Irelia +2 is nuts. How many sets? Well, set 3 is coming out in just a couple days for Unleashed. There are currently 2 sets, Origins and Spiritforged. And if you're watching this in the future, there is as many in between Unleashed and this video. How does Weapon Master work? Well, Weapon Master on cards like Lucian is essentially when you play the Lucian, play it onto your base or wherever you're playing it, you get to equip for 1 recycle less of whichever color that it is. So a lot of equipment is just 1 recycle anyway, so you kind of just get to attach it for free. But there are a few, like for instance, Skyfall of Orion, which is a 1 and an equip, so I believe you do have to pay the 1 for that. I'm not a Lucian player, other people are. Just seemed a little bit all in for me on a glass cannon, but that's Weapon Master. The Azir deck uses it to great effect, where you get to just kind of cycle a lot of equipment onto things basically for free. How does gear work? It is just another type of card. It sits typically in your base is where people represent them. Some of them tap, some of them you have to pay a cost and then discard them or send them to trash, for instance, in order for them to work. Lots of different things that gear do, but generally they stick around until the end of the game if they don't get destroyed by something like a salvage. Okay, last couple of questions. Riftbound, this isn't a question. Unleashed, yes, this weekend. It's going to be pre-Rift. Release comes out a week from now. I'm looking forward to Unleashed. There's some pretty cool stuff in there with LeBlanc. Riftbound booster box. Love opening booster boxes. Everyone does. Everyone is determined to see who gets the overnumber card, the epic, the high rarities, and then say, well, this box is dead. Isn't always the case. You never know what's hiding in them. Riftbound Spiritforge, that was set 2. It was really fun. I got to cast 2 RQs for Spiritforge. Had a lot of cool stuff happened in Spiritforge. Riftbound Unleashed release date. It is, I believe, May the 8th-ish. Let me open a calendar and see what it is. Yeah, May the 8th for Riftbound Unleashed. That's gonna be it. I'm gonna end the video there. Hopefully you learned something or a few things. Hopefully I got everything right. If you see anything that needs tweaking, if we've had any new rules come out since I filmed this, if anything ends up changing, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you've got any other questions about Riftbound. I will endeavor to answer them for you. Otherwise, I will be in Utrecht in a couple of months' time. I'm going to be practicing a lot to be able to get there. But yeah, that was pretty much everything the internet is asking right now about Riftbound.